Hello and welcome to Granada Reports. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. On the programme this evening.
COVID is still out there. The disease, sadly, still remains a risk.
A reality check from the Prime Minister, how the North West is reacting to the government's plans for controlling COVID over the autumn and winter.
A lot of people seem to think it's finished, and it's not. It's still all around us.
We'll be asking if the government's doing enough, with many predicting the pandemic could surge again in the coming months.
Also on the programme tonight.
Terrified for those she's left behind, the campaigner fighting for disabled people's rights in Afghanistan from thousands of miles away in the northwest. Don't try this at home. We're meeting Barry the Bee Whisperer, a man who gets a real buzz out of his job.
And it's been a hive of activity in the weather office today, so I'll be able to bring you the very latest forecast a little later on.
First, the North West reaction to the government's so-called autumn and winter plan. The list of measures it's hoped will prevent a surge in coronavirus cases and the NHS being overwhelmed.
Yes, the Prime Minister says he doesn't want another lockdown, and this afternoon he told us how he hopes to avoid one. The government's laid out a Plan A if things go well and a Plan B if they don't.
Plan A will see booster vaccines offered to all over 50s and first jabs offered to 12 to 15-year-olds.
It's highly likely people working in social care or the NHS frontline will need to have their COVID vaccines and a flu vaccine as well.
People will be encouraged to meet outdoors, encouraged to wear face masks indoors, wash their hands frequently and use the NHS app.
Businesses will be encouraged to ask people to prove they've been jabbed or taken a negative test.
That's Plan A. Plan B would be tougher, although still short of a full lockdown.
Introducing mandatory COVID passes for large indoor settings like nightclubs and other places like festivals and sports stadiums.
Mask wearing will be compulsory in some settings.
And the return of the advice to work from home.
In a moment, we'll be talking to one of our region's leading GPs to see if he thinks the government's going far enough to protect the NHS.
We'll also be seeing how our region's MPs are reacting.
But first, our reporter Jennifer Buck went to West Lancashire to see what people think of the plan to get us through the next few months.
COVID is still out there. The disease, sadly, still remains a risk.
A reality check from the Prime Minister and a plan for the winter set out today in the hope of avoiding a return to restrictions. Hugo's Cafe Bar in Ormskirk opened a year ago after the first lockdown. Now its owners are trying to plan for winter, whatever it may bring.
We're worried, between me and my wife. We run it between us and like I said, we're new here. We don't know what to expect here anyway during the winter. We do know it is a seasonal place. If there was further restrictions involved, lockdowns, things like that, it would really affect our income.
On a busy Tuesday lunchtime, winter worries seem a long way away, and these customers want to enjoy the sunshine, not think about face masks and social distancing.
Frustrated. A bit fed up really. Feel like we're kind of going backwards rather than going forwards. We've been vaccinated, so just need to get back to a bit more normality. And
I don't like face masks. I hate them, but we've got to do it. It's our duty to do what we can. A lot of people seem to think it's finished, and it's not. It's still all around us.
Plan A encourages meeting outdoors and the wearing of face masks indoors.
It sounds as if we might have to go into masks again. I think that does affect us because our customers of a certain age, they see masks and they don't feel as confident. So we may lose them, but ultimately it is lockdowns that will affect us the most.
Lockdown is seen as the last resort. Under Plan A, vaccinations will now be offered to 12 to 15-year-olds and a booster for the over 50s.
When you've got a large proportion of the country, as we have now, with immunity, then smaller changes can make a bigger difference and give us the confidence that we don't need to go back to the lockdowns of the past.
For businesses like Hugo's and so many across the country, it's fingers crossed that Plan A works. Jennifer Buck, ITV News in Ormskirk.
Well, joining us now from his busy surgery in Liverpool is GP Dr Rob Barnett, who's one of the leading figures in the British Medical Association in the North West. Dr Barnett, the government has a plan with infection rates rising and more mixing. Is that enough in your view?
I don't think it is. I think it's a missed opportunity. You know, they've talked about Plan B. I don't actually know when Plan B is going to be enacted, and I actually would have thought that there's a lot of measures in Plan B that should be in Plan A. You know, when I'm out and about, I don't see people social distancing. I don't see people wearing masks. You know, Prime Minister talked about the vaccination rate, and while, you know, nationwide there may be over about 90% of people who've had a first vaccination, certainly where I am in Liverpool, we're about 20% less. So, yes, vaccinations are important, but they're not the be-all and end-all. They're not the ultimate answer.
And we are seeing 1,000 people a day being hospitalised, and that's before flu cases hit. That is a worrying trend.
Oh, it is. If I look at sort of the hospital rates in Cheshire and Merseyside, I think we've got about 430 who are already in with COVID and COVID-related problems. You know, we only need to go back a few months when the numbers were probably, you know, less than 10. So actually it's the wrong time to be saying that, you know, we're going to let restrictions sort of lapse.
So your message is really we have to really take care. Liverpool still has significantly lower vaccine take-up rates, but COVID passports have been dropped. Is that a missed opportunity? I'm,
you know, quite frankly shocked that the government has taken that attitude. You know, I understand that, you know, there were problems, you know, behind it, but actually I think it would have been sending a message which said vaccinations are important. You know, we need to take this seriously. I think the fact that the government's dropped that just shows that they're not giving consistent messages.
Now, do you support jabs for 12 to 15-year-olds, or would you have preferred to see people wearing masks in school? You're concerned about people dropping the masks.
I think it's important that 12 to 15-year-olds are actually vaccinated, because not only will it sort of help them, but actually will help the generations that they're living with. So we need this sort of two-pronged approach. And again, I think it's just taken a long time for us to get there. I don't know what the uptake is going to be, pardon me, but, you know, we've certainly got to encourage a greater uptake.
OK, well, let's hope that message gets through. Dr Barnett, thanks for talking to us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, let's speak to our political correspondent, Leisha McNally, and bringing back any restrictions is always going to be a political risk. So how has this plan gone down with our MPs today, Leisha?
Well, it is a risk, Amal. Remember back in the summer when the final unlocking was once branded irreversible. That seems a very long time ago now. But with case rates getting worse, one look at the weather forecast tells you all you need to know about why the government may want to keep some measures in their back pockets. The weather is getting worse, which means people are socialising outdoors, windows are being shut, they're cramming onto public transport instead of walking. And as the Health Secretary told MPs today, that gives coronavirus a natural advantage. So that anyone who was hoping to hear him rule out the possibility of national or even local lockdowns today was disappointed. Instead, Mr Javid outlined some of those Plan B measures which could be deployed if things get worse. Among them, controversial vaccine passports we touched on previously. That hasn't gone down too well with those North West MPs who just a week ago were fighting to scrap the idea.
I think in terms of vaccine passports, not in terms of an ethical and moral sense, that's part of my objection to them, but also from a practical point of view, that they don't work or do anything of use. So something that's of no use now, I don't think is going to be of any use in the future. So I'd just urge the government to completely rule that out for the autumn and winter.
And Leisha, Labour, what do they have to say?
Well, they've raised concerns about exactly what could trigger that transition from Plan A into Plan B. MPs want to see the data. They want to know how many deaths or hospitalisations the UK could be expected to live with before these measures are brought in. And some are wondering why the government isn't taking smaller steps now to prevent what could be a giant leap into a lockdown.
What we need to know is that the government is not just planning for when things go wrong, but actually is going to take measures now to protect and prevent prevent an unnecessary and rapid spread of infection. And so it is disappointing that measures that could keep us safe and help to reduce the spread of infection aren't being put in place or kept in place now. For example, things like mandatory mask wearing or social distancing, which we know help to reduce the spread.
So a number of disagreements about the way ahead, but in all of that, one thing has been very clear. Our best defence against a winter crisis is the vaccine.
Indeed it is. OK, Alicia, thank you.
To other news, and a 19-year-old man's been charged with the manslaughter of a war veteran who was assaulted outside his home in Preston. Frank Fishwick, who was 86, was found with a facial injury in Fulwood on Friday but died a day later. Police say shortly before the assault he'd spoken to a group of youths who'd gathered on a stairway. Mohammed Al-Araj appeared before Preston magistrates.
Community leaders in Liverpool are hoping a new scheme will change the way people help to combat homelessness in the city. The Change Liverpool network wants people to donate to an online fund rather than giving money directly to those on the streets. They say the cash can be used in a more targeted way to help rough sleepers.
We all know that challenge when we walk down the street of someone asking for money, and we all know that we find it difficult. And if you give money to someone on a street, you know as well that you are continuing to resource life that is on the streets. And Change Liverpool wants to present an alternative to that, an alternative place to give your money and an alternative answer to what your money can do.
Wirral Council is trying to identify fly tippers who dumped 9 piles of rotting waste under a motorway bridge. It's thought the 9 large truckloads of rubbish were left near the Junction 1 retail park at Bidston Moss in Wallasey.
Next, to the warning from our region's nurseries that they're being underfunded by the government.
Yes, a survey's revealed 85% of childcare businesses are making a loss or only just breaking even.
Nurseries say official funding for 3- and 4-year-olds doesn't even cover their costs. Our correspondent Rob Smith reports.
Wow! Oh, nice. That was a big squash.
Learning through play at nursery costs both parents and the government. But 97% of nurseries in the northwest say government funding for places isn't enough. In COVID's wake, the vast majority expect to make a loss or just break even. One early years care provider from Ormskirk telling me today they're undervalued.
We were known as the fourth emergency service during COVID. Many of us stayed open so that we could accept the children of all the police, the NHS workers. And, you know, the funding is just not enough. It's not covering the costs. A couple of £1 an hour difference between what we get from the government for an hourly rate and what the actual cost to a nursery is for a child hourly.
The National Day Nurseries Association argues pandemic-triggered shutdowns and child absences have hit hard, and a return to full business rates next spring will do more damage. It says childcare providers in the northwest are being paid less by the government than the national average.
There's no way you can deliver high-quality childcare for £4.30 per hour. And this figure hasn't changed for years, despite that the government, argues that they have invested record amount of money into childcare. We have got the comprehensive spending review coming up, and this is really an opportunity to make sure the new generation of children get the best start in their life.
We asked the Department for Education to comment. They told us.
We recognise that the pandemic has created challenges for early years providers, which is why we provided significant financial and business support throughout to protect them. We have invested more than £3.5 billion in childcare in each of the last 3 years, and we're making millions more available through our early years recovery work to level up children's outcomes.
Outcomes no one wants to see go down. Rob Smith, ITV News, Ormskirk.
Well, next to the Afghan refugee who's made our region her home.
Yes, Banafsheh Yaqubi was a leading activist in Afghanistan, fighting for the rights of disabled people, many who'd been injured by landmines or bombs.
It's now 1 month since the Taliban entered the capital, Kabul, and Banafsheh fears for the safety of people with disabilities living under their rule.
She's been speaking to our reporter Tasha Kichiri about what help's needed for those who are still there.
I'm under pressure. I have nightmares every night. Here is very nice country. UK has all the things, but I'm not calm because of my people and because of my parents who are there. And I don't know what will happen to them.
Banafsha Yakubi has been visually impaired since birth, but that hasn't stopped her from achieving her goals, helping others and working towards a PhD at home in Afghanistan. She went on to work as a human rights commissioner there, fighting for the rights of disabled people and women.
What's life like for people with disabilities in Afghanistan at the
It's
moment?
more than difficult because in that times at least we had some organizations, some NGOs, we had a law for persons with disability, but nowadays they don't have anything, they are alone.
When the Taliban took over as one of the most prominent disabled activists and women, Banafsha was forced to flee.
It was especially difficult for me as a woman and as a person with disability to work like before, to serve my people. I didn't choose. The situation and condition urged me to leave the country.
According to the Asia Foundation, it's thought as much as 80% of the population of Afghanistan have some form of disability. In many cases, these are people left with severe injuries from landmines and bombs. Banafsha still runs a charity in her homeland aiming to help people just like her. It's called Hope Found.
We are trying to help children with disability, persons with disability and widows who are functional with disability. Because in these days, if they cannot work, if they cannot have income, what can they do? How can they be alive?
Even though Banafsha is now thousands of miles away from Kabul, she still feels the need to speak out about what's happening to disabled people in her country.
This is the reason I am here. So if I'm alive for my nation. I would be their voice. They have this expectation from me. And they said, please, please, don't leave us. Don't forget us. And we will not forget them. Although we are far from them, but they cannot take them out of our hearts. My heart is with them.
Tasha Kachiri, ITV News, Manchester.
A powerful message there. Now let's take a look at what's still to come on the ITV News at 6:30 with Romilly.
Coming up, we'll have all the details of the government's plans to deal with COVID in England. From booster vaccines to mask mandates, we'll explain what rules might remain and what the PM's plan B is. Also ahead, Love Island's Amy Hart tells MPs of the horrific abuse she receives online. And from A-levels to A-lister, Emma Raducanu wows at the Met Ball, set for stardom both on and off the court. Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Now, our next story is all about bees, which can divide opinion, especially if you've been stung in the past. I know I have been.
Yeah, it hurts. So we thought we'd start with some fun facts. Did you know bees beat their wings up to 200 times a second?
And only female bees can sting. Male bees aren't friendlier, they just don't have stingers.
And all bees don't have 2 wings, but 4.
This was all part of the lesson for a group of school children on Merseyside who got to meet the bee whisperer of Toxteth. As Paul Crone reports, everyone was buzzing about their day.
Brave and not bothered in the slightest about bees. Pupils from Smithdown Primary School in Toxteth have spent the summer looking after the hives at the Merseyside Caribbean Community Centre, all under the watchful eye of the man they call the Toxteth Bee Whisperer. He was a beekeeper in Jamaica before moving here 20 years ago, and not for Barry Chang, a hint of protective equipment.
I wouldn't say I don't get stung, but if I get a 1 or 2 stung, it's no problem to me, because even the sting from the bees is medicine. If you go on Google and put in bees venom, you will learn that it's good for arthritis and rheumatism pain.
Save Our Bees is a project which has received £20,000 from the City Environment Fund from Liverpool's City Region Combined Authority, and our amateur apiarists are loving it.
First, we check out if every bee is okay, and then we spray smoke on them to make them quite sleepy.
Barry opened up the hive and he told us to look for the bees, the queen bee, and it was actually pretty fun because Barry was telling us what type of bees there were, and it was very interesting.
Not one word, all right. Not one word. So, along with our intrepid cameraman Scott, off we went into the hives containing an estimated 200,000 bees. Well, I wasn't going to count them, was I? Oh, there's a lot of bees, a lot of bees about here. And can they put a shift in at the coalface? That's why the Save Our Bees scheme is so valued.
Some of the conversations that I have with some of these kids, they leave you for dead because they know they've been brought up and they understand the importance of what we need to do to save the planet.
We left the bees to another busy day in the hive, and we reckon people will be swarming around Barry the Bee Whisperer's honey for some time to come. Paul Crone, ITV News, Toxteth.
Croney, intrepid.
Yeah, better you than me, Croney. Don't fancy that at all.
And we can't stress enough that Barry is an expert, so please don't go anywhere near bees investigating them unless you're fully protected.
John's got the weather.
That sunshine really made your eyeshadow pop, you know. And you put the wipe in the bin, not the toilet.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Go ahead, Queen.
Yes, hello again. Well, it's Blackpool illumination time, which of course always makes for some nice photos like this one by Ray. But the cloud today was, well, a little bit less colourful, shall we say. Grey skies this morning over Elton Reservoir, which is just down the road from Bury. But there were one or two bright intervals here over the Manchester Ship Canal at Stockton Heath. So we've got low pressure on the weather chart at the moment, hence all that cloud and some outbreaks of rain. But as we head through the next couple of days, Thursday for instance, some high pressure on there will give a fine day. But into Friday and the weekend, low pressure returns, so it does once more become more unsettled. So overnight tonight, mostly dry, but a lot of cloud, a lot of low cloud and mistiness by the end of tonight, especially down towards Cheshire there with a low temperature of around 11 or 12 Celsius. Now here's a lovely sunset recently over Leyland. Tomorrow the sun's up at 6:43, setting again at 7:28. So in the morning there could be quite a bit of fog down in the south there, down towards Cheshire, but that will gradually lift, and then it's a bright enough day, a fine day. A little bit cloudy in the Pennines at times where there could be some spits and spots, but plenty of sunshine towards the coast there, and a top temperature of 20 Celsius in Manchester city centre. Light northwesterly winds, and that fine weather will continue tomorrow evening. Might just be a shower towards the Isle of Man. Into Thursday then, well, a decent day under that ridge of high pressure, as I say. Broken cloud, plenty of sunshine. It should remain dry, maybe just an odd shower in the afternoon. Highs of around 19 Celsius. And as I say, rather unsettled towards the weekend. Enjoy your evening.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Those eyebrows are unreal.
For Manchester United, they're down to 10 men in Switzerland, but still 1-0 up.
And I'll be back with our next bulletin after news at 10. Thanks for your company tonight.
Bye-bye.